Well, if you're buying a house or you own a house, just think about this. Overall, Australian housing is now valued at more than 4 times the worth of the entire Australian economy. And it's set to get even more expensive. And as a result, in theory, Australia is the second wealthiest country on earth. I'm intrigued to know if you feel that wealth. This surprise is due to the value of your house going up. Now, in a moment, an economist who describes the housing situation essentially as a bubble. But yesterday, the Reserve Bank Governor, Michelle Bullock, appeared before the Federal Parliament's Economic Committee yesterday. We also learnt from the Governor of the Reserve Bank yesterday that despite the federal government's housing programs, we will not meet demand for housing. Allegra Spender, the federal member for Wentworth, put this question to Michelle Bullock.
In the bank's view, is supply meeting the sort of growth and demand that we are seeing in housing? And particularly recent policies such as, I'm interested if the RBA is modelling things like the recent deposit scheme change that the government has put forward in terms of which is going to come into effect in October, and to see, is that going to have any impact on housing sort of demand or anything? What's your perspective on this?
So first point is, yes, you're absolutely right, it is a supply issue, and are we close to meeting it? I think all estimates I've seen is that we are not. Yeah.
The Governor of the Reserve Bank, Michelle Bullock. We're not even close to meeting the housing targets. So let's go to my guest, once again, Leith Van Onselen, former Commonwealth Treasury economist, these days at macrobusiness.com. He's also an economist at a couple of super funds. Leith Van Onselen, you have described the federal housing target as a sham. I'm quoting you. Why?
Yeah, Steve. So the reason why it's a sham is that it was basically a target that was never achievable, right? So what the federal government's done is they basically said that over 5 years, beginning 1 July last year, they set a target to build 1.2 million homes. Now, that requires 240,000 homes per every single year, and that's more than Australia has ever achieved in its history. So Australia's single biggest year of construction was about 223,500 in 2017, yet the government set a target of 240,000 for 5 consecutive years. It's just not possible in this environment whereby, you know, since the pandemic, we're seeing construction costs go up about 40%, land costs have gone up by about a third. We've got fewer builders to build homes because a lot of them have gone out of business, gone bust. We've got higher interest rates. And we've got builders basically competing against government big build infrastructure projects, energy projects, that sort of thing. So the supply side of the housing market is bottlenecked. And basically this target was never achievable.
And now Michelle Bullock, the Governor of the Reserve Bank, has substantiated that claim. She says everything they've seen, they're not going to reach it.
Yeah, that's right. It's not just the RBA, also the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council, which is the federal government's own advisory council on housing supply and affordability. They released their State of the Housing Market report a few months back, and they forecast that we're going to miss the target by about 262,000 homes. And as a result, the shortage, which is already estimated between 200 and 300,000 nationally, is going to worsen by another 79,000 over the 5-year housing accord period.
So what's going to be the effect of that?
So basically what we're going to get is a tightening rental market and more upward pressure on rents and lower vacancy rates, that sort of thing. So basically just a worsening of the rental crisis that we already have.
It's already appalling now. I mean, I think there's almost the places available for rent here in Brisbane is insignificant, as I understand it. It's already, it's something like 1.0 places available. I forget the exact figure, I'm sorry, but there's hardly anything available now as it is.
Yeah, that's right. So the national rental vacancy rate's already at a record low, and CBRE, which is a property analytics firm, they released a report about a week ago which forecast that the rental vacancy rate, which is now already at a record low, is going to get even worse over the next 5 years, and it's going to hit a fresh record low. And as a result, the rental costs are going to soar. So basically, the rental crisis is going to get a lot worse, and this is a function of obviously the population growth. Is far too high, given that this high immigration program.
Is population still growing faster than we're actually building houses? Oh,
absolutely. So it's growing a lot faster. And in fact, the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council, as I said, forecasts that we're going to be short 79,000 homes over the next 5 years. But here's the rub, Steve. In its sensitivity analysis, the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council said that if we merely had population growth that was 15% slower than forecast, than the Treasury's forecast, instead of having a shortage of 79,000 homes, we'd actually have a surplus of 40,000 homes.
Now, I don't understand this. The federal government must know this. So the population rate a large number of population, sorry, I'll start again. A large number of immigrants can come into Australia, but by simply reducing the current rate 15% would essentially solve the problem of housing supply. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. So it wouldn't fully solve it because we've already got a shortage of between 200 and 300,000, but it would help because it would actually mean over the next 5 years we'd have a surplus of homes over that 5 period. So the cumulative shortage that we have would be run down. So it would start to solve the problem. And in fact, Canada is already...
The federal government has that report in their possession.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was released a couple of months back. It is the federal government's own advisory council, but they refuse to actually acknowledge it.
Why?
I don't know, mate. It is the $1 million question. It is literally a numbers game here, and their own advisory council in black and white says that if you merely slow the population growth by 15%, you'll have a surplus of 40,000 homes over the 5-year period rather than a 79,000 deficit as is currently forecast. And the problem with it is, Steve, that the population forecasts in this report are actually quite conservative. And they actually have another forecast in there that says that if population grows 15% faster than projected, which seems more likely given the immigration flows we've got, instead of having a 79,000 shortage over 5 years, we'd have a 200,000 shortage over 5 years. So, this is a diabolical situation. We just simply cannot build enough homes for the number of people that are coming in.
My guest is Leith Van Onselen, former Commonwealth Treasury official, these days Chief Economist at the MB Fund. He's also co-founder of macrobusiness.com.au. Leith Van Onselen, the University of Melbourne's latest Household Income and Labour Dynamics in Australia survey, a very long qualitative survey, has been released. Alongside this housing situation, what does it reveal to you, Leith Van Onselen?
Yeah, so what it basically suggests is that Australia's living standards are in decline. So what it showed is that our household disposable income has fallen to levels below the beginning of the pandemic, which is, I guess is not a surprise to anybody. It also has some pretty disastrous, data on housing. So what it showed is that real rental costs, so that's after once you adjust for inflation, have actually increased by over 40% since 2006. And as a result, the report actually shows that in 2003, which is as far as it goes back, 6% of retirees were renters. In 2023, which is when this report's based on, 12% of retirees were renters.
It's doubled.
It doubles. It gets worse though, Steve. So it actually forecasts that by 2043, about a quarter of retirees will be renting households. So basically the Hilda report also suggests that this rental crisis is just going to get worse. And we're going to have a future whereby, by 2043, a quarter of retirees are going to be renters. And also the report also shows that we're going to have far more retirees carrying mortgages into retirement than currently. And that's been a case whereby in 2023, we've got more retirees carrying mortgages into retirement than we had in 2003. Sorry.
How can it be that we are the second wealthiest country on planet Earth and our living standards are going backwards and these figures are there? What's wrong with this equation?
Yeah, so the way those household wealth figures are gauged by UBS and Credit Suisse, which are the two separate reports they have, which rank us as number 2 in the world, it's based on basically the reason why Australians are supposedly rich is because we've got expensive housing, right? So because our houses are worth a lot of money, that then makes us notionally rich. Now, the latest data from Cotality, which basically measures the housing stock across the country, showed that on average, the average dwelling in Australia, is talking houses, units, and, if you go to Alice Springs or Sydney, whatever, if you average it out across the nation, it's now worth $1,030,000.
I'm going to have to leave it there, Leith. Thank you very much for your time.